The Crooked Epic. 1. In. 1. The Inn of Maniacal Madness. 4. Ted. The Cave. 4B. 2. This was not what Ted found when he saw Mr. Hurst behind the door. His body was dismembered by 3 gigantic rodents, which were as large as mountain lions, and blood was all over the wall of the nearest stable. Their hair was matted and their maws were dripping wet, sloppily drooling. Hovering over the dead schoolteacher and clawing in competition, whipping their tails against one another, their yellow eyes were bloodshot and even the whiskers drooping off their noses were covered in crud. Repulsed, Ted was struck with paralysis from shock until one of the monsters looked up, noticing him. If luck was not on Ted's side, he might have been the next victim of the beasts within the barn. Thankfully, before the rats finished their agitated snarling and hissing from over the carcass, there was a loud bark and angry growl from the opening behind him. The same exact black dog instantly ran from the right side of the barn doorway and pounced between Ted and the agitated pack. It lunged down on 4 legs, guarding Ted and growling viciously at them, as Ted stumbled and fell back onto the ground. The fight between the 1 canine and 3 gigantic rodents was getting ready to begin when he felt someone smash their hands against his shoulder, grab and twist around his head and jaw. 2 strong arms pulled Ted upward by his neck and head, and a forearm choked him against a much bigger man's chest and ribs as he dragged him toward the tool shed. Struggling and flailing his hands to resist apprehension, he watched the giant rats attack the dog, savagely biting and jumping onto each other. The dog managed to hurt 2 of the beasts badly, but was already bleeding from both its ears. His father must not have realized the noise from outside, but Ted was more relieved when he did not come to save him because of the crazed and uncontrollable violence erupting inside the barn. In a flurry, he watched the back of the barn shrink and disappear behind the tall grasses behind the back lawn. Ted was maltreated by the tall man with blonde, short-styled hair through the woods towards the hill. The dog lagged behind them, but Ted heard barking and saw the 2 injured rats off to their left were running away, whining in pain. When the 3rd rat jumped through the rough foliage of the forest toward them, he realized whomever had kidnapped him had acted unintimidated by it, as if he had some power over these horrible animals. The last terrible rat ran along as defender against the enraged dog which had given chase. The dog charged the rear, impeded by a limp. They neared the small foothills which led up to the big hill, and Ted punched and elbowed against the man who had captured him. Ted was surer than ever that he was the insane stalker who had chased him to Hob and had returned in the shadows of the night before. Anticipating the man's climb to the tunnels which led back to the mysterious town, Ted continued to attack his captor by maliciously biting, scratching, and screaming. With the dog lagging further behind, Ted became morbidly terrified. The maniac held him hostage and laughed to antagonize him and squeezed his throat harder, cutting off his breath and compressing his windpipe to near suffocation. Ted saw a 5th figure emerge in the chaos. A large object was crashing through the trees, rushing down the slope from the cave above. A strong brown stallion with a darkly cloaked rider was on course to collide with them. The kidnapper slowed down on the foothills in preparation for the oncoming battler. The stallion effortlessly weaved through the trees while the shadows of the woods cast down on him a silhouette which resembled a dark unicorn, with the cloaked rider hunched over the mane and a hand held high with an item in its grasp. The man let go of his grip on Ted's neck as the cloaked rider got closer. Finally, he threw Ted to the ground where he landed on a log, and Ted scraped his knees on splintering wood and knocked against a dense but rotted tree core. The landing took away Ted's breath, and he began gasping again, desperate to breathe, holding his stomach and wincing in pain. The rat that followed them began pacing around them, snarling as the black dog raced at Ted, still barking. When the stallion came within 40 feet, galloping between the trees, it occurred to Ted the extraordinary courage of the horseman. If the man who had kidnapped Ted was the same person who had followed him into Hob, he must have connections to the people living there. Ahmed's voice in the graveyard that Friday might have been saying his name. Barry, which Ted had heard their father speak of with Mrs. Wilson, referring to the fugitive his father was looking for. Unable to still run, Ted started to crawl away from the criminal as the rat stomped his humongous toes on Ted's left arm and swatted him in his side with oversized claws. A deafening bang shook his eardrums and curled him onto a ball of crying fear and pain. More banging through the forest and sound waves produced ringing inside his ear canal. The man who had taken Ted from his home, who had assisted in the murder of Mr. Hearst and was their father's nemesis, was shooting a revolver at the horse-riding assassin. Squinting into the sky between the leaves of trees above, Ted witnessed a flash of white, which filled the air as he gripped the center portion of the amulet he had kept from the previous day. When he regained his vision, Ted, Barry, and Alex were near an unknown lake. Alex was flying through the air away from the horse that fled and landed on top of Barry Reed's. Barry fell backward, and Alex reached into his belt and pulled out a long dagger. His left arm with the cast was dirty and throbbing in pain, but Alex was desperate for revenge. Alex wildly stabbed his blade into Barry's throat. He stood to his feet off the writhing body as the dying fugitive gargled and grabbed his neck, losing blood.